Right, good morning and welcome to Elevenses from Survival Skills. I've got a little warning that the connection is unstable at the moment. Hopefully we'll move on through that. You're watching Elevenses with Kevin Williams of Survival Skills Rider Training. And as usual, if you've got comment, question, feedback, anything to say, drop me a line and I will get back to you at the end of the show. I'll also try and pick up on comments as we go along. Clive has already said good morning. So there we go. Right. Okay. Now we've got a pretty busy show this morning because after putting everything together last night, I got a very late comment on something else I'd posted, which led me to a story from the BMF, and I'll come on to that in just a moment. But because I really do want to comment on that, I may have to hold a couple of stories over from the list that I'm about to give you. But if all goes well, what we'll be talking about is how the BMF have revealed the creation of the National Motorcyclists Council, how shiny side up events have been axed because COVID has hit New Zealand, but watch out for an online event. We ask how many potholes will £500 million fix? That should be 500 million. I put £500. Not many is the answer to that. The Transport Minister ignores the pothole risk to motorcyclists 3 weeks after meeting MAG. You can upgrade your Africa Twin to Android Auto. There's a Ride Vision collision avoidance system near production. I might have to hold those two stories over. But former World Supersport 300 champion Ana Carrasco is back on the bike for the first time after fracturing her spine last year. And I'll finish off with some thoughts on that National Motorcyclists Council that I started off with. So, okay, sit yourselves down. I think you will need a cup of tea today and probably a biscuit too. Don't forget you can join me for Elevenses on Wednesdays and Sundays at 11 with some topical news, possibly controversial views, and usually some better biking tips. All right, okay, so what's happening? Well, a new organisation intending to speak with one voice on behalf of motorcycling has apparently been created. Now, news of this, the formation of this National Motorcyclists Council, which appears to be ahead of the official announcement, was broken in the British Motorcyclist Federation news release on their website, which reported on the proceedings of BMF regional meetings in January 2021. There was a statement from all the sort of officers of the BMF. And the document itself went up on the website dated Monday 15th, and I heard about it, as I say, late last night, Tuesday the 16th. So naturally, I went across and had a quick look at it, and then this morning went back to it and had a longer look. Now, basically, in the report on the virtual meeting, Jim Freeman, who's the BMF chair, he explained how, in response to the coronavirus epidemic, a platform of like-minded bike organisations was assembled to speak with one voice. This platform, which was called the Coalition of Motorcycle Organisations, or COMORG, in the horrible sort of abbreviation speak that we use, had come together, and basically its function was to put out advice to bikers about what they could and couldn't do when it came to riding motorcycles during the pandemic. But Mr. Freeman also said that COMORG had shown that there was a need for a unified voice to actually talk to government. And what he said was to civil servants in the Department of Transport, you're one of a number of organisations. They want to know, who do you represent and what are your issues? He continued, due to the success of COMORG, it's been decided that this will now evolve into the National Motorcyclists Council, the NMC, and they're working on a launch, hopefully in February. He continued that the BMF are financially committed to the NMC, along with the Trail Riders Federation, the ACU, Auto Cycle Union, who are the people who look after motorcycle sport, and IAM Road Smart. The Vintage Motorcycle Club are likely to join. MAG are supporting on a non-financial basis via their Director of Campaigns and Political Engagement, Colin Brown, who you may remember we spoke to some months ago. He continued that the NMC will be in cooperation and under the leadership of Craig Carey Clinch. Craig worked for the Motorcycle Industry Association, MCIA, with his company Rowan Associates, providing political engagement and also public relations. Mr. Freeman concluded, "We feel this is a strategically major development and a really good outcome from 2020. Right, okay, hang on to the end of the show and I'll give you my thoughts on whether this is actually such a great outcome for motorcyclists as opposed to motorcycling organisations. Right, okay, on with the show. So what else do we have? Oops, that's the wrong one. That's what I wanted to show you. As you probably know, I've been working as a guest speaker on the Shiny Side Up Tour 2021 down in New Zealand. And unfortunately, several of the Shiny Side Up events scheduled for the next 2 weeks have had to be cancelled because New Zealand has locked down to prevent a COVID outbreak from spreading further. The statement from the organisers explains that this is in line with instructions from the Ministry of Health and the New Zealand government themselves. So the following events have been cancelled: the Auckland Bike Fest, the Kerry Kerry Mini Bike Fest, the Hamilton, Greymouth and Queenstown Talk Series events. But the following are still scheduled to go ahead. On the 23rd of February, New Plymouth will be a talk event, and on the 25th, Rotorua, there will be a similar talk event, and finally at Tauranga, another of the talk series events on 2nd of March, and one final talk series at Napier on the 6th, before the final Bike Fest event at Kapiti on the 7th of March. Now, although I haven't heard any more yet, the notice that appeared on the Shiny Side Up Facebook page also said, "We are planning an online event for those who may miss out this year. Stay tuned for more information." As of this morning, 11 o'clock, it's now midnight in New Zealand, I hadn't heard any more, but I have been in contact with some of the other online presenters, and those I've talked to have already confirmed that they are perfectly happy to work to make this happen. So if you're watching Down Under on catch up or even late night before bed, stay tuned. I'll get back to you as soon as I know any more and I'm able to release information to you. You can follow www.shinysideup.co.nz for more info. I'll keep you updated, as I say. So kia kaha, which means stay strong in Maori. Right, okay, so what else has been going on in the world? Well, the government has announced a funding plan to fix 10 million potholes in England. It was announced last Monday that English councils have been allocated their share of a 500 million funding tranche for highway maintenance. And this funding is expected, says the press release, to fix 10 million potholes across the country. Transport Minister Baroness Veer said the funding allocated today will help councils ensure roads in their area are kept up to standard and that the potholes that blight road users can be dealt with promptly. And the cash basically has come from a 2.5 billion pothole fund announced by Chancellor Rishi Sunak in the 2020 budget, which is being delivered in 5 instalments between 2021 and 24-25. And it's all part of a wider funding that the DFT provides for road maintenance, which actually totals 1.1 billion across England for 2021. Now, the press release claims that the average pothole costs around £50 to fill in, and that this year's cash injection will therefore ensure that the equivalent of 10 million potholes can be filled. Now, the moment I heard that £50 figure, I thought, hang on a minute, that doesn't sound very much to me. And given this government's capacity for being economical with the truth, I did have a bit of a think about it. And my guess is that it covers materials only, because it sounds remarkably cheap. Why? Well, if you want a tarmac driveway laid, that'll set you back around £50 to £60 per square metre. And we're not talking anything about the load-bearing capacity for somebody's driveway, as is needed for a road to be made and good to support, potentially HGV vehicles of, 44 tonnes. So my guess is there are actually significant extra costs involved in fixing a pothole. Somebody has to find the pothole in the first place. Then it had the the action plan to fix it has to be coordinated. You have to factor in the time and the cost of bringing materials and people to the hole, the costs of the plant that's required, the wages, obviously the gang digging it out, making good any problems that may be below that load-bearing course, which is under the tarmac, and then filling the whole thing in and resurfacing. And I really cannot see how £50 can cover all that. A costing I found online on a set of recent council accounts sounds more reasonable to me. They actually build each pothole at £700, which I think is much more realistic figure. Now, of course, if the bill per pothole is quite a lot more than 10 times the amount, we're not going to see the number of potholes claimed fixed with the cash injection. So 7 to 8 million potholes seems more likely. And that underpricing of potholes could help to explain why, despite a 296 million pothole action fund, which covered 2015-16 to 2021, and a one-off 420 million injection for the highwaymen in 2018, we are still finding our roads falling apart at an ever increasing rate. So that's the cost of potholes. But hang on, there is good news in this announcement, because it doesn't include motorcyclists. We don't have to worry about potholes, it appears. It seems that Baroness Veer, who can be seen in the picture here, if I get the picture up on the screen, there she is, Transport Minister Baroness Veer, seen here in an open and positive meeting with the Motorcycle Action Group. It was Colin Brown that I mentioned earlier, and Selina Lavender, the chair, in the picture also. That meeting took place on Wednesday, the 27th of January. That was just 3 weeks ago. And Baroness Veer said, "I thank the representatives of the Motorcycle Action Group for the meeting on Wednesday and the case they made for motorcycling. I feel there are a number of areas where MAG and the government can work together more closely in order to raise the profile of motorcycling and improve outcomes for riders." So why is it that yesterday, in announcing the pothole funding, she said, "We know potholes are more than just a nuisance. They can be dangerous to drivers and cyclists alike and cause damage to thousands of vehicles each year." You'll notice that once again, powered two-wheelers are conspicuous by their absence. Selina Lavender, who said after the meeting 3 years ago, she was delighted by the spirit of the minister, her desire to make positive changes for motorcyclists, but perhaps Baroness Veer thinks potholes really aren't a concern for motorcyclists. Or maybe she's already just forgotten the meeting. After all, 3 weeks is a long time in politics. Thanks to Mag there. I nicked that photo from your press release. Right, how are we doing for time? Time is ticking on a bit, so I will skip the next two stories and I'll carry those over to next week. So, okay, next photo then. This is Ana Carrasco. She is the first woman ever to win an FIM World Championship motorcycling event. And the good news that she's back on a bike with a test section at the Salant circuit in Catalonia. You may remember she crashed during a test at Estoril in September on the 10th last year, and she fractured the D4 and D6 vertebra in the fall. In January, the former World Supersport 300 champion was back in the operating theatre several months earlier than planned, it seems, and she has had the plates and the screws removed from her back. And a few days ago, a CT scan confirmed that there was no damage, no further damage to the wound. There was sufficient healing of the fracture, and the latest surgery had also healed up, and so she was cleared to ride again. And as I say, she's back out on the bike, which is good to see. And it gives her a good chance of starting the 2021 racing season, which begins at the end of April in decent physical shape. She's scheduled to ride with the Kawasaki Provec World Supersport 300 team, and she said, "I'm really pleased. The operation has gone well, according to all the doctors. I want to thank everyone for their support these last few months. I'm desperate to get back on the Ninja 400. We'll be 100% mentally and physically ready when the season starts." stars. Well, I certainly hope that she will be. Right, okay, so from racing and back to the National Motorcyclists Council. So, as I said, I'm topping and tailing the show with a look at this new concept today. Now, the first thing I'll say that I noticed when I read the BMF's statement yesterday, which was in that newsletter about their own internal events, I'll notice the word is motorcyclists and not motorcycle. It's subtle, but the implication is that we're representing motorcyclists, bikers, rather than just a mode of transport with this council. Now, it may seem an unimportant distinction, but the question we should all be asking is who will get a voice on this council, because conventionally what happens is a bunch of people like that come together representing organizations, and they put a council or an organization or some kind of team together, and what happens is, of course, that it ends up representing their own organizations, and what they do is they push their own viewpoints to whoever they feel they need to talk to. In the case of the press release from the BMF, they said it's the Department for Transport that they need to present a unified voice towards. Now, that's all very well, but if they don't plan to go out to canvass ordinary riders, that is the ones who are not interested in getting involved in political organisations like MAG or the sort of more recreationally oriented BMF, or sort of groups like the Trail Riders Federation or Vintage Motorcycle Club. They're all kind of limited viewpoint, aren't they? They all represent a very particular subsets of motorcyclists generally. The one thing that you can say about all these organizations is, by contrast with the number of people actually riding motorcycles, their memberships are tiny. So why am I coming out and saying this now when perhaps people will be thinking you should be behind them, you should be supporting them? Well, there's a very good answer to that. It's because when there's a brand new body in town, there's still time to influence it. And I would say look to the success of Biker Down. Now, why Biker Down? Well, it was created by a fire service. In our case, it was Kent Fire and Rescue. And the point is that whilst they had a road safety remit, because of their role, they were actually required by government to go out there and do something to try to improve road safety. They had no prior sort of worldview, if you like, of what a rider safety intervention should be. And as a result, that's how my own Science of Being Seen presentation has become an integral part of Biker Down. But once established on their own terms, I know that shifting internal viewpoints and policies within organisations like this becomes almost impossible, because they bring in what they already know. I know that from attempting to deal with the MCIA, Motorcycle Industry Association, on rider training issues. They asked for a consultation. I responded, and I was basically told to, mind my own business. And that was nearly 20 years ago. So, what are the chances of this National Motorcycle Council's success? Well, Jim Freeman commented on that, and he said, the big plus is they can talk with unified voice to government. But the trouble is that a unified committee like this is actually a bit of a mongrel, isn't it? It's a mongrel beast, because it's composed of organisations with their own push-pull, which all move in different ways. Whilst there may be common ground in certain areas, the danger is that they will promote their own viewpoints. Jim Freeman said, a long time ago, the BMF was the voice of motorcycling. But over the years, there's been a fragmentation of interest. There's the Vintage Motorcycle Club, the Trail Riders Federation, also Cycle Union, etc. We're all aware of the classic choice of BMF or the Motorcycle Action Group when it comes to political lobbying in the UK. Well, that's exactly the point that I'm making. Whilst related, groups like this often find common cause initially, which allows them to come together for a certain time. What often happens is that internal pressures then pull them apart again. What do I expect them to achieve? Well, my particular interest clearly is motorcycle safety. Motorcycle safety is clearly a very important issue for the Department for Transport, so it should be one of the items which is on the table from this new committee. And if I suppose that it is going to be an important topic, then what I say is to the organisers, please, please, please push for input beyond the usual suspects. Look beyond the police, road safety bodies, look beyond ROSPA and the IAM. These people have had the vast majority of input into rider safety since the 1970s, and further back. But the 1970s is where things really started to, to be pressured to improve rider safety. And if you look at what's been achieved, the overall crash rate has come down. The overall injury rate appears to have dropped too. But if you look at where accidents happen, it's the same old places. As I keep saying, it's the same old accidents in the same old circumstances. So nothing has changed. Motorcycle World's been inventing committees and panels for years, and it seems to me they always consist of the same people, or at least the same interested bodies, and they're all saying the same things that everybody expects to hear. And since that's what they expect to hear, there's no everybody's in agreement, and nothing seems to change. 50 years we've had these better biking campaigns, and 50 years we've had driver awareness campaigns. The first Think Bike video came out in 1976. We are nearly half a century on from that now. The Ride Bright campaign in London predated that by a year, I believe. And we've still got collisions happening at junctions all over the country for exactly the same reasons that they happened when both those campaigns were put in place. So why does that happen? Well, in my opinion, it's because the same old ideas are simply being recycled in new clothes. Accidents happen, it's said, because of bad driving and bad riding, and we could cure the problem if everybody was better trained and better behaved on the road. But it ignores the fact that most crashes that happen to ordinary riders and drivers, and they're doing ordinary things that they've done successfully before. That is simply overlooked in the pursuit of that simple, straightforward, bad people do bad things narrative. So for my word is, for God's sakes, get an independent voice or two on that committee. Science of Being Seen is an example of how you can break this cycle, because it doesn't simply recycle the look harder, ride brighter exhortations that we've had since the mid-70s, but it uses real science to explain how and why drivers fail to spot motorcycles and cause the errors that lead to these collisions. And it explains how riders fail to use the rider aids effectively, why they perhaps believe more in their effectiveness than they should do. It doesn't rely on a faulty belief that brighter is better and that drivers should look harder. I tried to create with Science of Being Seen a culture of understanding that things do go wrong, and that we need to understand how they go wrong in order to take steps to avoid them going wrong in the first place. And that's a very different approach from the blame-laden retrospective of what should have happened, which is the usual approach to road safety. My work on Science of Being Seen is a subset of the ideas in No Surprise, No Accident. And quite frankly, if anything is going to change, and this council is not to be just a talking shop recycling the same old stuff, I really think that it's the places like Science of Being Seen and No Surprise, No Accident that we need to go. We need to find fresh ideas to look at road safety and rider safety in particular. And if they want a model of how the message can be brought to bikers, I'd also suggest that they look at Shiny Side Up from New Zealand, because what they've done in New Zealand is that they've realized that there is a potential for international input, and not simply to look for the ideas that come from inside their own country. They have gone outside and they have found people who know what they're talking about and who can talk directly to motorcyclists. We've been very, very, very bad at that here in the UK. Do I expect things to change? Well, naturally, if you want me to be brutally honest, no, I don't. I am cynical about this, as I am cynical about most attempts by the motorcycling establishment to improve matters for you, me, and other ordinary riders. My ideas, are there and available for anybody who wants to listen to them. I spend a lot of time putting them out there into the public purview, with the hope that a few riders will actually start learning for themselves. Right, okay, so basically, sorry to ramble on a bit, sorry to batter your ears with some negative thoughts about this new motorcycling council, but as I say, it appears that the BMF have jumped the gun a bit on releasing information about this, as it's out there on their own website. I feel no compunction about talking about it myself. And so finally, that brings us to the end of the show. As I said, I'll carry those other items over to the next one because we've already done nearly 30 minutes. But don't forget, if you are not a Facebook fan, and I can quite understand why, you can now find all the latest tips on Tuesday and skills on Saturday Facebook posts over on my coffee page. What was the next thing I was going to say? Oh yes, I was just going to put the link up, wasn't I, to the actual index page for those. So let me do that there. Paste. Yeah, there we are. So the index basically makes it easier for you to track stuff down, because if there's one thing that Facebook is rubbish at, is working as an archive. Don't forget, there are also my regular 60-second safety better biking videos, which come out every Thursday. Hopefully I'll get another one fresh up tomorrow. And there is also the newsletter to allow you to avoid having to rely on Facebook's algorithms to follow what's going on. So if you're interested in getting a weekly newsletter, no spam, I promise you, do head over to that. And last but not least, I am still delivering online coaching to anybody who's interested. I am locked down, but I am not shut down. And I'm also available to deliver presentations to groups and club. I've done a couple in the last couple of weeks, and I've got 2 requests in the pipeline. So if you want a group talk, something a little bit different from the usual run-of-the-mill stuff, drop me a line. All right, that's it for today. Stay safe out there, and I'll be back with another Elevenses on Sunday. And thanks for the nice words there, Nick. And hi to Cheryl and Alan as well. Right, so I shall leave you now and hopefully see you again on Sunday. Thanks for looking in.